Can you hear me okay? Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here for the Zone It Like You Mean It open house. We have just like a 10-minute presentation to give a lay of the land. I think we have a good critical mass here right now, but hopefully you've been enjoying a lot of great conversations, getting questions answered, having your feedback heard so far. Tonight, Ed up here is recording this presentation, so we will sync this to the PowerPoint and post it online after the fact as well, so you can share it with your friends. So I'm Mel Yema, I'm the town's Community Development Director. We're also joined tonight by so many of our wonderful town staff, if you want to raise your hand, as well as some of our supporting help from MIG and GBSM, if you all want to raise your hands for helping us with this event. And I'm excited to say we have some of our amazing town council members here, if you want to raise your hands as well. Thank you so much for being here. One quick just housekeeping announcement before we begin. I did hear that there's a poodle on the loose upstairs. So there were 2 poodles tied up and one of them got loose. So if that's yours, I think he's running around the entrance upstairs. So we're here tonight to talk about the town zoning code and design standards update. Whether you've been part of this process, you joined our introductory webinars, you did the survey, or you're new to this process, thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome so far to see familiar and new faces tonight. So let's give an overview of kind of why we're updating the zoning code and design standards and help give a lay of the land. So our zoning code and design standards are some of the best and most powerful tools we have to shape what makes Crested Butte. So what does it mean to zone it like you mean it? It means ensuring your regulations can ensure a colorful community full of colorful buildings and colorful personalities. A community where local residents have the ability to put down roots here and flourish into the future. A community that really prioritizes biking and walking and transit and engaging with our architecture. And a community that's really focused on environmental stewardship and resilience. But what if our current code and standards are moving us in a different direction? What the market is producing when you look at the combination of land prices, construction prices, and what land uses we allow, it's resulting in the high-end single-family home, the high-end boutique hotel, those sorts of needs that aren't necessarily community serving. And for a long time now, the public sector has been stepping in and providing affordable housing, and it's unsustainable to have this completely bifurcated market. From a design standpoint too, you might though notice while there's this big bifurcation, these buildings kind of all look the same. And something we have talked about through the community compass and the historic preservation plan and the community plan is how do we make sure our architecture and our buildings continue to reflect the unique personality and the stories of our community? So those are the kinds of things we want to talk about tonight. And what if these challenges are leading us on a path of slow community erosion? Think of some of these things. I'm 15th on the wait list for childcare. I can't find a plumber to fix my hot water heater. All my friends moved away and I may follow. I'm now commuting over an hour each day. I can't afford to eat out. All of these things tie back to what we allow to be built in our town and how that all works, and that bifurcation is resulting in this slow erosion. So how do we get back on track? Back in 2021, through the Community Compass, we decided to really say, hey, let's stop reacting incrementally to all these challenges, and let's get on a more proactive track of where we want to go. And it started with the Community Compass to identify what are our shared values and goals of the community. We wanted to start at the really high level to identify where do we have that common ground? Where do we want to go as a community? And that was at the 10,000-foot level. It identified we're accountable, connected, authentic, and bold. We have a lot of strategic goals the town council wanted to prioritize. So what came next was identifying more of the vision, plans, and strategy around our goals with transportation mobility, the historic preservation plan, the climate action plan, the community plan, and now the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails plan, which as a plug is open for public comment right now. And those really helped us identify what's our vision, what's our strategy to help meet these goals in a way that's aligned with those shared values. So now we're actually implementing that vision through our regulations and programs. We're updating our zoning and subdivision code, our design standards, developing our new 5-year housing plan, a new plan around community spaces. That really ties back to that vision. We really hope what you're looking at tonight and what you're giving feedback on is not a surprise, because they're all things we talked about in the community plan, we talked about in the historic preservation plan, which are all now guiding what our actual regulations are so they can go back to those shared values. And then these regulations influence what actually gets built on the ground. The new housing project, the new park, a new development that comes online, they should all tie back what we see at the ground level back to our shared values and goals. So let's go more into the how. The community plan was all about what's our future land use vision. It identified we want to improve the livability, functionality, and sense of community in Crested Butte by leveraging the town's development regulations to thoughtfully guide more free market investment in community serving housing and community serving spaces for businesses and nonprofits. This was all about trying to bring the private sector back with the public sector as a partner in meeting community needs. It had 2 big objectives: to expand, diversify, and distribute community-serving housing. That's something the town's been working on for 30 years now, and it's exciting to say over 1/4 of our housing stock is deed restricted in some form today, but we know it's still a challenge, and the community plan said, hey, we really want to continue distributing housing throughout the town. But it also introduced a new objective. We want to facilitate and create and preserve more community-serving spaces. Think of maybe one of your favorite businesses that maybe sold or left. What came in its place? Are there those types of community-serving commercial spaces we're at risk of losing? Whether it's trades on Bellevue, childcare, the affordable restaurant. This is new territory for us, but we're recognizing there's more to our cost of living, more to our livability as a community than just housing, and how do we bring the commercial side into the equation? So the community plan said, let's try to meet those objectives in a way that retains and builds full-time community and retains the authentic small town scale and feel of Crested Butte. So the proposals for zoning that we're talking about tonight really try to balance those 2 things. Then we had the historic preservation plan. The community plan was all about our land use vision. The preservation plan was all about our architectural vision, how our buildings look and feel. And the goal of that was to ensure Crested Butte's architectural identity, apologies for the typo, reflects Crested Butte's deep sense of community and its evolution over time. We've been so great about preserving our mining history, but now everything in the town is required to be built to look like it comes from that era. So we're freezing our history in time, and it's actually diluting that really strong preservation that's happened from such great foresight from community members before us. So the plan identified a strategy to rethink how we go about historic preservation and design. It told us to refocus the mining era historic district to a tighter boundary around the historic core, to recognize Crested Butte's evolution by establishing a new period of significance, marking the town's transition to a recreation and ski town from a mining town. And then outside of those areas, to allow greater flexibility outside the historic districts, focusing on design standards that really focus on mass, scale, and form, rather than historic replication. So those plans identified the vision and recommended the tools of how to go about it. But now we need to make it happen and implement it. And that's going on through the zoning code update, the design standards update, and the housing and community spaces strategies. So this is a very integrated process, and let's talk about how they all work together. The zoning code is all about how things fit. How do we enable and incentivize more community-serving housing and spaces throughout the town? So on these side tables, it's a lot of things like what uses are allowed, how do they fit on a site, how much mass is allowed. The design standards is all about how things look. How do we continue to celebrate the past and allow more flexibility to tell the stories of the future? So the back wall is all about understanding our current design standards and guidelines and asking you, where do you want more flexibility? How do we make sure architecture tells those stories of today and the future? And then we also are developing new 5-year strategies around housing and community spaces. How do those things work on the ground? We can enable things to happen in our zoning code. That doesn't mean someone will actually do it. How can we support implementation through complementary projects to maybe showcase the new code, identify incentives like financial incentives to help property owners go about using these new codes, and looking at complementary policies too when we talk about things like deed restrictions, what types of requirements are in there, and we have some feedback boards around that as well. So where are we in this process? It's a lot to take in and it's a lot going on, but we've tried to intentionally do this together because they all relate together, but stagger them a little bit. We started the zoning code first as soon as the community plan was adopted last summer. We did a lot of outreach in the fall, and I hope that you see a lot of your feedback in action tonight. We're coming closer to the final draft, and we're seeking feedback to really refine those recommendations. With the design standards, those kicked off early winter. We're starting to shape that process. We're reviewing existing documents, surveying architecture, and we're seeking your feedback to shape what the new standards look like. And then the community spaces strategy is all happening as well. We're developing the first draft right now and seeking a lot of feedback to shape that too. So let's talk about the types of things that we're introducing tonight or presenting tonight and kind of what those outcomes are. What we're really hoping through both of these updates is to keep Crested Butte, Crested Butte. That could mean an authentic small town full of colorful buildings and personalities. From a zoning side, that could mean trying to achieve active neighborhoods and corridors through really clear land uses of what's allowed and where. On the design side, engaging architecture that fosters a sense of place and tells the story of our community. And maybe on the community spaces or housing side, we have some town-led projects that anchor community spaces. I know what's going to happen next with the fire station is a big conversation that's going to come up later this year. We also have our pros plan, too, of our active park spaces and making sure they're really multi-use. Maybe keeping CB means it's a livable town where people can put down roots and flourish in the future. From a zoning perspective, more housing options for a diversity of needs and spaces that prioritize those community needs on the commercial side. From design standpoint, that could mean architectural flexibility for more simple, affordable building options, giving more choices. And from the strategy side, having new deed-restricted commercial space, a totally new concept for us that we'd love your feedback on for things like business incubation, as well as continuing the town's housing programs. Keeping CB means a connected town where walking and biking comes first. From zoning, pedestrian-oriented scale and mass, and a focus on buildings and people over cars. With design, we have buildings and porches that really engage with the street. And from a strategy side, we continue to implement the transportation mobility plan by really improving mobility choices and ensuring that we have a lot of programs and infrastructure in place to really back up that pedestrian focus. And lastly, keeping CB could mean a bold community, grounded in environmental stewardship and resilience. It's amazing that the chapter to save Red Lady has ended, but there's new chapters ahead and new challenges ahead. From a zoning side, more options for people to live closer to where they work and access services. That means less commuting, less pollution from cars. From a design standpoint, efficient and resilient building materials to ensure we're prepared or more resilient for those disasters that could come our way. And then from a strategy perspective, continuing our climate action plan implementation, which had a big focus on programs and rebates to improve energy efficiency in existing homes. So tonight, I think a lot of you have been here already, but we have different stations as well as passports to fill out. So in the atrium, you can get a process snapshot on the big picture, where we are in the process, why we're doing this, essentially what we covered just now. The zoning code update, we have residential over here with Aaron, and I'll be at the commercial table over there where Dara is, which is all about those draft zoning changes we'd love your feedback on. And then on the back wall, the design standards, what's working or not working with Jesse and Marcia, where should we allow more flexibility, and understanding that new proposed approach for historic preservation. If we have kids here, I hope we do, we have some mapping, drawing, and activities for fun. And if you fill out that passport and drop it at the top, we'll do a raffle at the end. We'll email you if you win. And we have some great raffle prizes of gift cards to the museum and Rumors, as well as Pooh's Corner for any of the kids here. So as you go into these stations, remember this context. Any of the changes we're talking about tonight will influence development or redevelopment going forward. It's not going to drastically change the look of your neighborhood overnight. The reality is Crested Butte is pretty built out, and we already have really strong demolition regulations. This map shows the vacant lots left in the town. And we just have a slow development market here too. We typically have maybe one commercial development a year, maybe up to 7 residential developments a year. Any of the changes we're talking about will be slow and incremental, but can have an influence in the long term of the trajectory of our community. So tonight, we hope you leave with a clear understanding of how this update relates to you. If you have a burning question, if you don't understand something, please talk to any of us. Again, town staff or Marcia or Miles, please raise your hand. We would love to answer your questions, hear your feedback. We want you to feel heard and see your feedback in action. We've made a lot of changes since that community survey in the fall, and we hope that you see that. And we hope you leave with an optimism for a zoning code and design standards that really focus on keeping Crested Butte, and are a reflection of those community values identified in the compass. So where do we go from here? If you have more feedback after tonight, please reach out, speak with us, meet with us. We do have an upcoming town council work session with Bozar on April 6th, where we'll talk about development review processes and check in on the zoning code. We'll summarize the feedback we've heard tonight and from them at that meeting as well. And then just as a side snapshot, we do have the Parks and Rec and Open Space and Trails plan online and published for public comment. So we'd love for you to give your feedback on that at that QR code there. And lastly, we'll reach out if you win the raffle. We'll wait till the end of the night and draw out of the bucket, so drop your passport at the entrance. And thank you all so much for coming. We'll go ahead and just do questions at each of the stations, so that way we can pause the recording. But we really look forward to talking with you more, and thank you so much for being here.